Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome to this week's Morphmarket Auctions for the first week of the year in January, ending anywhere between Friday the 3rd and Sunday the 5th. Hope everybody had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. We should be getting back to our normal live streams and everything like that on Tuesday, so look forward to that. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this weekend's auctions. Starting off with this proven breeder Yellowbelly Het Sunset boy. He's gonna go for an absolute steal. Having a het for your recessive for the male is never ideal, but sunsets are still pretty pricey. Maybe this is your way of doing it. You know, having the extra Yellowbelly gene in there is kind of nice too. The best part is that he's proven, so you're ready to go. You can also test for sunset. So even if you want to do this the really hard way of creating your own hets, you could send in the shed tests to RGI for the babies that you would create and possibly create some really cool combos, or pick yourself up a Het Sunset girl. I'm not sure if you're going to be able to find a proven breeder Het Sunset girl for the same kind of deals you're finding here, but regardless, it will still be a little bit cheaper whichever direction you decide to go. Not for everyone, because like I had mentioned, you do really want to start with visuals when it comes to that, but again, sunsets are expensive, and I think that everyone should have the opportunity to make really cool things or run the projects they really like. So that's what I'm all about, is trying to show people that path. And you know, cheaper does mean typically, well, longer and not as good odds, to say the least, but it's possible. Once you hit your first sunset, hopefully get a boy and you grow him up, and then suddenly you can replace this guy and resell him as well and give someone else the same opportunity that this seller from Redline Pythons is giving you. One other thing is that this was actually purchased as a breeder for him, who essentially probably did the exact same thing that I'm mentioning to you, from Always Evolving Pythons back when, you know, Het Sunsets were probably a little bit more expensive even. So it'd be a good opportunity for the right person looking to get into sunset but not spend a whole bunch of money. Next up from Mere Mortal Morphs would be this 1-to-1 Desertghost Clown Pied project. So the male is a Pied 100% Het Desertghost, and he is 66% Het Clown. The female is a visual Desertghost, and she is 66% double het Clown Pied. So, you know, obviously you would want to send this in right away for a shed test. And with 66% odds, you do have better than not odds of getting most of it, I'd say. But, you know, to get all of it would still be a little difficult. But regardless, your male is a visual Pied and is 100% het Desertghost. So really, you just kind of want to hope at least for the one to hit, and you're just hoping for extra with the Clown. The reason I mention this is, again, this is a bit of a roll of the dice when you're running something like this. And it's not for everyone. It's for someone who might want to get into this a little bit cheaper. And understand, when you take risks like this, you could just be creating, I mean, the worst case scenario would be that you get a Pied. It might be a Leopard as well, apparently. That's also 100% Het Desertghost, and then you get a Desertghost female, and that could be the case. But with 66% odds 3 times, you're more than likely going to hit on a few of these things. Definitely another one to send in a shed test for, and if you could hit the triple recessive, that would be really nice. And if you haven't seen what that would look like, well, here you go. It is a really sharp, clean, creamy looking animal. So that would be really cool to take a chance and be able to hit something as magnificent as this. Again, you don't want to run just on chance, so you should understand, and whatever you're willing to invest in this, you should only realistically go into it expecting, at least, for it to be Pied 100% Desertghost for the male and Desertghost for the female, but with a good chance of you having some extra fun along the way. Next up would be another Yellowbelly 100% Het Sunset, but this one's a female. Now, the traits say Blackhead Leopard Pied, but this is clearly not that. If you read the description, you can see that it says that it's a Yellowbelly 100% Het Sunset Pied, a girl. And if you go further with our next result, you'll probably see that they uploaded a few of these types of Blackhead Leopards and just accidentally put the wrong traits on there. I'm not sure if you can edit an auction after it's going, so sometimes, you know, definitely pays to read the description, that's for sure. So if you want to go a different route, you could get this girl who is a little over or just about halfway to size at 790 grams. She would be a really nice addition, possibly even more so than the boy, in terms of just getting a girl that's that big with Yellowbelly in her. And it's always a little more ideal, in my opinion, to have your females have the hets and have your males have the visual. So if you have a little bit more capital, so to speak, to throw around, this would probably be the better route to go, and then get yourself a visual sunset male, maybe even with something really nice like banana or another recessive in there like lavender, but then you're talking a little bit more money for sure. I don't think I'd recommend, ironically, getting the two of these. You could do that. You could get the one we showed off first. But if they indeed do both have Yellowbelly in them, ever so often you're going to get an all-white snake. And if that also happens to be when you hit a sunset, you're going to be awfully upset that the ivory that you now have created is hiding the visual sunset morph. So not the most ideal of combinations between those two, but again, if you go a different route, this might be a very good addition. Also from the same breeder, and you can probably see now why they probably accidentally cloned the exact traits and everything like that, but then named it correctly in the title and the description. But again, this would be another Blackhead, a Leopard Pied. That's possible Yellowbelly. This is another girl that's pretty big, 820 grams, and if you wanted to make some really cool dark pieds, this would be a very nice way to do it. That's an alternative to the normal Panda Pied, and quite frankly, it also holds a lot more pattern than the Panda. Panda Pieds, which, believe it or not, we're going to look at later, are very stark black when they are black. Sometimes there are literally all white Panda Pieds, and that's the crying shame, because when they're black, they're pitch black. I kind of like the variety in this sort of stuff. In fact, my favorite of those types of darker Pieds is the Suma Pied, but this is certainly another nice way to look at something like that. In fact, it's a little different in that it radiates from the center of the saddles. It's kind of pitch black on the outside of it, and then it goes to a brown, and it goes back to a pitch black. So very, very cool, and the head is obviously incredibly dark. Another benefit here is that Blackhead is an awesome gene, very versatile, and it can work very well with light genes, which sometimes they kind of combat each other. It does not happen with Blackhead. It kind of goes hand in hand and creates really nice contrasted animals. In fact, the brightest snake I own is a Blackhead, and even though they're a dark morph, it's incredible. So this would be a really nice one to get. It'd be really cool if it proved out it's Yellowbelly. It might be another one that you want to send in a shed test for. Next up would definitely not be for everybody. For one, this is Canada only, but there's a reason I wanted to show it. There is something about this that's a little controversial, and I've highlighted it for you. This is a hybrid. This is a cinnamon wall python. Get it? Wall python. It is a Woma python and ball python hybrid. It is also carrying the cinnamon gene, and let's just call it what it is. It's beautiful. My thoughts on hybrids, even though I do not keep them and have no plans to do so, are that if you are combining animals that have a similar care routine, it's probably fine, but you definitely should do your research on it. Some people are more purists. I think that is a little antiquated, in my opinion, to be a purist just for the sake of the purity of the line. I get it. I do get it, but as long as the animal is able to live and has a good care regimen that can be followed, I think it's all right. But they definitely are controversial, there's no doubt about it. I just figured I'd show it off because it is interesting, and this animal is sharp. It's very, very beautiful. Those browns in it are cool. The pattern is just insanely wild. You definitely see it doesn't quite look like a ball python, and the head's a little different and off. The pattern obviously is wonky as heck, but it looks enough like one that most people could probably be fooled, but it is not completely. This one here is 50-50, and I just thought it'd be interesting to show everyone. Next up would be this female Redstripe Yellowbelly clown, and these are always really sharp, and it can probably still be gotten for a decent price. I mean, look at the sides on these animals. They are absolutely gorgeous. Fun fact, you're a couple genes away from creating the Pompeii with this one. You're only missing the black pastel and the Spotnose to create that. So if that was your goal, you could get a male that has those genes and kind of work towards that and roll the dice on hitting it there. But regardless, there's so many other combos you can create with something like this. It's really nice. A beautiful female like this could definitely suit pretty much everybody. You know, once it gets up to size, there's a lot you can do with these genes. They're both subtle, ironically, Redstripe and Yellowbelly, but when paired with many other things and even themselves, you can kind of see that just from the sides alone. It is most definitely not so subtle anymore. When you start comboing this with even more, it gets even more absolutely bonkers and insane. So definitely don't sleep on these subtle genes, because they might seem small and insignificant when they're by themselves, but when they start to get comboed up, they are giants, no doubt. Interesting combo here, something I have not seen, would be this bamboo pastel paint. There's actually another one from, I think, the same breeder that's just bamboo paint, and I think paint is a really, really awesome gene. As the description says, this could be the first and only bamboo paint combo, this and the other one that is on the market here with it. Bamboo is a very, very strong gene, but you can still see the paint at work here. The pattern here is definitely wonky, and you can definitely see the granulation in there, but it is getting washed out by the famous whitewashed sides of the bamboo, which I love bamboo, but having worked it, I can tell you right now that it can be a little difficult to put into certain combos. When the combos are amazing, they're amazing, but sometimes bamboo is so busy and so strong that it can kind of cover a lot of other things. Sometimes strong genes don't play nice with other genes, if that makes sense. It also is in the blue-eyed leucistic complex, so you'd have to be careful pairing this boy with anything else in that, otherwise you'd end up with an all-white snake with blue eyes, and you'd never know that it would be a paint. Paint is a really awesome gene, though. You can kind of see what I'm talking about here, and you can see it definitely on the sides there, but since it's whitewashed anyways, it almost, not quite, but almost gets eaten up by that bamboo pattern. Regardless, paint might be a really good one to get, and there is a reserve price on this. No idea what that is, but you always walk this one up. So if you're interested in getting the paint gene, maybe you just theoretically want to spend up to 500 bucks. Don't just type 500 bucks on there. If it was much less, you'd be feeling awfully foolish, because it would shoot the price all the way up to 500. Instead, bid it up in $25 increments until you get to where you no longer feel comfortable going up. And if it does stop beforehand, great, you can stop too and treat it like a regular auction at that point and bid away and compete with other people who might want it. Otherwise, if it reaches your max level, just stop. And if the auction doesn't go beyond that, then it gets voided. And if it does go beyond that, that would be because you're not bidding, and that would no longer concern you anyways. But regardless of how you think the bamboo might interact with this, the paint might be worth it just in general, just because of how potent it is. It's a really cool gene, and it's highly underrated. I think that eventually paint is definitely suited in a market where I'm seeing a lot of these cool granulation type things starting to take over, starting to get a heavy amount of interest. I think it's definitely due for a run. Next would be a really cool combo, this being a Redhead Hypo to be specific. A Redhead is another very subtle gene, and you look at this and you can probably think, well, I don't really see it at all, but you can look at the head. It definitely makes its mark known. You see it's a little bit more bright, a little more orangey, a little more tinge in there, and you might think, okay, great, why is it so expensive? Well, in certain combos you start to see how beautiful it looks. It's just absolutely rusty red. The coloring that it gets down its back is very expressive. This is just a redhead clown that you're looking at here. I'd love to see the hypo version with that. In fact, it pretty much wipes the head clean on a clown. At least you can kind of see maybe there's a little bit of pattern, gives it kind of a cap of that redness, and creates this just blown up dorsal going down the back of it. Very, very nice, very, very busy. And it's a different kind of almost like granulation that's in there, right? Because it's going down the dorsal of it, but you still see it on the sides, and it brings up this nice whites, just flaming, just kind of shooting up on the sides of it. So it creates a lot of cool contrast, because you have this dirty white with some speckling of black and red in there, but then you've got the pattern that's also got some of that dirtiness in it, and then the dorsal just stands apart from it all. There's nothing that's kinda about that one. That is just insane with just how dirty and rusty kind of cool colors that are jumping in there. So again, another subtle gene that you should not ignore. I would love to see this stuff sort of worked with hypo, because while it deserves it, all I see is clowns really, and it'd be interesting to see people start working these combos with hypo, and maybe even with Desertghost. I'm sure it's already being done, but these bring out insane amounts of colors and contrast, so I'd love to see that route explored. Another one I'm starting to see more and more of, and I'm not sure how I feel about it, because there's some caveats here, would be this super scaleless 66% Het Pied. And super scalelesses, let's make no mistakes about it, are super cool. They always look different and goofy, and we're not just talking about just, well, the fact that it has no scales. I mean, look at the pattern. If it's a super scaleless, it should have a normal pattern, right? It's just scaleless at this point, but it doesn't. And the pieds are that way too. They're weird. Everything is weird and different. Not just the look of it, but the pattern. It flips it around and creates some like upside down type world where the patterns are now something completely different to be explored. And I would love to see a world where we could explore that. However, there are some caveats with the super scaleless. They're not as easy to keep. There are definitely a little bit more to these that meets the eye. There's nothing neurologically wrong with them, but obviously with no scales leaves them a little bit more, well, unprotected. And on top of that, they don't shed quite the same. They need a higher humidity. In a way, honestly, you should treat this not like a ball python. It clearly is a ball python, but its care is not quite like a ball python. It needs more humidity, and on top of that, like I said, you can't really take rough surfaces quite as well. So having things like cypress mulch and stuff like that is probably not the best idea. Coco Noir, like the fine cocoa soil, might be the best option here. That's quite wet, or just paper towel that you are consistently keeping it wet depending on your climate and how quickly it's going to dry out, because sheds are a very serious thing with these. They need to have good sheds to thrive. And I've also heard, never substantiated this or not, but I have heard that the females are what you call subfertile, in that maybe they don't have the best fertility rates. But I don't know quite about that one. That's just something I have heard from more than just one person. I would need to do a little bit more research. And quite frankly, I'm not thinking that most people should have a super scaleless anyways. And it's really a shame, because they are cool. And you know, if you do the research and you think, hey, I really want to have a pet like this, or even work it, just realize that there's more to it. And as a breeder, realize those other things I said. If there is a subfertility thing, that's something major, because you definitely want to steer away from a female. Maybe even you'd want to get hets and get visual males in that case, similar to how you typically want to work the caramel gene when you're working that. But this one looks like it could even possibly be sunset. That would be interesting. It was created from a scaleless Het Pied to a scaleless Het Pied, so definitely scaleless. There's no doubt about that. The 66% Het Pied's in there, but this is like what you call like a pos het. But that would be super interesting. Again, you can see how weird and interesting they are. If you ever get a chance to handle one, I highly recommend it. They are very different, to say the least, and it feels weird. Even for like a snake, you get an exotic animal. This is like exotic. But if you're ever thinking about getting into this, I think that you should make sure that that is something for you, and realize that there's not a big market for them because of the issues. They're harder to keep, and it's a completely different thing. Some people think like, it's just a little bit more water. It's more than that, so definitely consider it, while also acknowledging that they are cool. Another different one here would be this Volta, and Volta, you notice here, is in green. Very different from like things we saw here, like a super form or just a regular gene or a recessive. So why is it in green? Well, it's because these are basically polygenic traits, and it's one of the only known ones that we supposedly have heard about. In Volta, it's really just from a different area. It's called the Volta region, and supposedly in that area, they are huge. So ball pythons from this area get much bigger than what you would normally get. Again, this is one that I just kind of want to show off. This isn't something that is usually a sales driver or anything like that, at least at this time. I will say that this one is pretty dark, which is really cool. But for all intents and purposes, this is a wild type, at least in its area. Could it have something a little unique and different to it? It could, because, you know, what I'm seeing here is a little bit funky, but, you know, a lot of my normals are a little bit funky. And I always think that myself too when I got it. Like, oh, what's this? Some cool granulation in there. It's easy to convince yourself there's something else going on when you're actively looking for it and you get really excited. But Volta is a thing, essentially. They're just bigger. So just another one I thought I'd show off. I'm not sure if this is something that for a project wise for everybody, but definitely a cool talking point. Moving right along to this acid leopard Spotnose het clown. As I already said, having your hets in the boys is not exactly the most ideal thing, but there's a lot of power behind this, so it could be well worth it. On top of that, it doesn't say that this is a proven breeder, but it is of size to breed. Acid is thought, I believe, or is proven, I'm not sure, to be the exact same as Confusion, so that might be ideal for a lot of people. Confusion is awesome, and if you've seen Confusion clowns or acid clowns, they have a lot of cool pattern, including on their belly. You can kind of see what I'm talking about right here. It goes through the entire snake. There's not very many ball pythons that have pattern on their belly. On top of that, their heads are always really cool. They usually have a little bit more of an orangey tinge, and the pattern on there is even cooler than normal for a clown. So keep that in mind when we're also saying that it has leopard and Spotnose. And leopard goes well with it because they're both very jumbly patterned. Spotnose does the same thing. The pattern has just become all over the place. It has absolutely exploded it and reduced it a bit in many areas. Very Batman-esque, and this isn't even a visual clown. Look at everything about it. Its head, everything's affected because of the genes that are at play here. So hitting the visual version of this right here in a clown would be incredible. I'm pretty sure it's been done, but you would have an insane looking animal right now. So in a way, having one that's already ready to go might be ideal for a lot of people, because you get the visual clown version of this, and we're not talking $85. We're talking a lot more. Maybe add some zero onto that at least, if not more than that. And maybe you use this boy and you hit right away. Let's just say you have a female clown ready to go. You don't got a lot of money, but you want to make cool things. This is a way to do that. Hit your visual, get lucky, hopefully. You can hit a visual acid clown if not having some extra stuff in there. And then once you get the visual version of what you're looking for, you can move on from him pretty quickly. He can have done the job for you. You get to replace him once the baby of his is growing up. And then you can do the same thing here and give that opportunity to somebody else. Next up, I'm going to have a little bit of a rapid fire round because there's a whole bunch of either proven breeder or about to be breeder ready females up. Many of them are from mad bull pythons, but I believe there's also a couple from noble reptiles as well. But we're going to start off with this banana Het Pied female right here. Another one, ideally, if you want to get into this and create some cool looking pet animals, you know, the Banana Pied. There are certain genetics that I think that always sell very well as pets at shows, and bananas in general are one of them. They will always be able to find a home, and you're creating things that are cool. They aren't going to be going for a whole bunch. Don't think that you're going to be doing all sorts of crazy things, but sometimes you can use that capital to help pay for some of the other projects you're wanting to do. Especially if you're just wanting to learn and whatnot, having a proven breeder female as a way to test the waters to prove that you're able to do this would be a good way to go. Just produce one clutch for a year and just see if it's for you. Another one here would be this Pastel Leopard Fire Het Pied. Lots of genetics at play here that would look very nice in a pied. Again, you do need to get a visual male because when you don't hit, you're at least knowing that you have a Het Pied on your hands. You know, if you go head to head, for one, your odds aren't as good, and two, you don't ever know without sending a shed test RGA that you have a Het Pied. You have to test every single one of them that isn't visual to be certain of that. Sometimes people say they have the tracks and stuff like that, which is sometimes the case, but once you get other genetics at play, it really changes things. And two, the tracks don't always play out the same way. Sometimes you get ones with tracks that aren't, and sometimes you get ones without tracks that are. But regardless, a good way to go if you just want to get some cheaper ones that still have a lot of power to them if you can hit the visual version of it. Another one here would be this Firefly Leopard Het Pied. You can see there's a lot of pied-based projects here. This one, again, another female. And then into the clown projects would be this Orange Dream Het Clown female. Orange Dream is a really nice one. It goes well with just about everything that you can think of. This one is pretty close to the 1,500 grand mark. In some cases, people might cheat and be able to breed this one because, you know, you start breeding now, it theoretically will go on a hunger binge and start eating a bunch and easily get the size. But Orange Dream clowns are cool. Orange Dream anything is cool, and this would be another cheaper way to get into some of these females if you're looking. Now we're looking at a visual clown here, a cinnamon clown at that. Again, two size. This one would be able to go right away, and cinnamon clowns are very nice. They have this really cool, beautiful head. As babies, they're even sharper than this. I've always seen them with this just nice, beautiful brown head. Completely wipes the pattern from it. There's a lot of combos you can make with this that are really nice. Then from noble reptiles would be this Candy Pied. Again, that's just about the size. This one here does have a reserve price. It's at $500 right now, with just about 2 days from the time I'm recording this anyways, and 10 bids. So I'm not sure what that reserve price is, but again, just like I said with the other one, bid to where you're comfortable and then stop there, or you're beating it and then you just wait to see if somebody else bids you and you want to battle them to get this girl here. And then another one, an actual visual Banana Pied from noble reptiles, and this one again does have a reserve price. We don't know what that would be at. Not as much interest in there, but again, there's still that reserve price anyways. Just about the exact same time left. Banana Pieds are always really cool. Again, this one is basically the size. It straight up says that it is not proven, so this would be a first time female, but it is basically ready to go. Taking a quick break from ball pythons, wanted to talk about this week's Hognoses. There's actually almost a full page, and there's quite a bit of stuff on here. Most of it very red, I noticed, because Albino is incredibly popular, and it deserves to be. It's my favorite one for Hognoses. But we're not going to even start off with those. We're going to start out with these 1 to 2 trio. From JMG Reptile would be this Anaconda Het Swiss male, 50% Het Mercury, a yearling Arctic Het Swiss female, and a juvenile 66% Het Mercury, and a possible Het Swiss. Now, that's a lot of stuff we're talking about here. This will probably go for a good amount. I'm actually surprised it's under 1,000 right now when we're watching this, under 24 hours left. Swiss is a newer one. I just learned about this actually within the last month, or probably less than that. And if you notice anything here, the Swiss morph is very dark. Lots of cool stuff here. I believe this is a Swiss Arctic, and this is just a straight Swiss, just pitch black. Some people have thought them to be maybe a different line of Sable, and maybe that is the case, but when I look at the Sable, I don't quite see the levels of darkness reached here, especially in the head. The head is never quite as dark. It almost looks like a Woma ball python when you get it just by itself. This is a Swiss just kind of by itself. You can see what I'm talking about with this very dark head, just almost like a Woma ball python in a way, in terms of at least the darkness of its head. You can see how a Swiss Arctic looks to me like a Woma ball python in terms of its coloring anyways. So there's a whole bunch here, and you do have that Arctic gene in there that makes it pop even more. The Xanthic, I think, is what makes it look like that pitch black, really. It is very, very nice. There's a lot of obviously possibles in this as well. If you notice, the 66% het Swiss female is 12 months old, so she's actually got some size to her with 47 grams, so she'll get the size a little bit quicker. You get a 14-month-old male, and then the other female is 7 months old. So a lot of cool potential there from one of the best, if not the best, hognose breeder there is. Next up would be this female Super Arctic Albino, and these are really nice. They're practically pink. I really like how it can get something so peachy and beautiful, and that it's the Super Arctic, the Albino, and it's also 66% het Sable. The pricing is really good on this one right now. If this proves out as Sable, then you can start making the Sunbursts with that, and each one would be Arctic at that. So you got good odds to hit that. And then for our final hognose would be this adult ready to breed, which you don't see a lot of, but I have been seeing a little bit more of lately. But this would also be an albino het Sable. So this male here is a het Sunburst. So he's visual albino, and then het Sable, like I said, the albino Sable is the Sunburst, which is arguably one of the most popular hognose morphs that are out there. It's very orange and reddish, and then contrast is just absolutely incredible. A bit of time left on this one though, so we'll see where that one could eventually end up. But if you need a male, this one would be a nice one, and being ready to breed right off the bat is really ideal. This one looks like it'd also be a possible low expression Arctic is what they're saying, so that's another cool thing that you might be able to get out of this as well. Back into ball pythons, we're going to start looking at the Panda Pieds that are actually available right now, and you can kind of see what I was talking about earlier. I've seen Panda Pieds on here a few times, but not very, very often. Panda Pied is a super black pastel pied. I don't see as many of them these days, and that's probably because the super black pastels can sometimes be kinked. It's not like 50% of them that are created are kinked, but there is a higher odds than what is normal. Anytime you breed a ball python, you can get kinks and deformities. If you breed long enough, it will happen to you, but it is something that you should realize if this is the sort of thing you want to go to. Also, Panda Pieds, as I mentioned earlier, are incredibly high white. You see the blacks coming in, and they're really black, but this one has its head and a little bit on the tips of its tail, and that is it. But believe it or not, Panda Pieds are so sought after still to this day that the pricing is going to keep going, and honestly, this is a good price for a Panda Pied, all things considered. Seeing what it looks like without the pied, you can kind of see how dark it is. When it has that het pied, sometimes they get these little ringers. This is not a pied. If it was, trust me, the breeder would most certainly be telling you as much. But you can see how dark they are. This one, honestly, I kind of like even more, just because it's got more of that black on there. Just wish that there was a little bit more of the whites, but that's really neat that it has that. There's another one up here that is, oh, Panda Pied, possible leopard. You look at this and you're like, what? Where's the black on it? Well, this happens. It's a no black Panda Pied, and it's just an all white snake with, well, black eyes, I guess, right? But it is still got the genetics in there. All of these, other than their first one, have a reserve price. So this one will sell, and I think it will keep going. The reserve prices, I don't know where they end at and whatnot, so it just kind of depends. But if you were wanting to get a Panda Pied or get into the project at least, there's males and females available for you to consider this weekend on the Morphmarket Auctions. Moving right along would be this Spotnose Yellowbelly Redstripe clown. We were talking about Pompeys earlier. Well, you don't get much closer than this. You're just missing the black pastel. It's amazing that just one gene missing would create this. From this to this. You see it. You see those reds creeping in. You see all that, but not quite there, right? And if you swap out any of the other genes, you start to see the same thing. The interactions of the 4 genes together along with the clown is insane. You know, you swap out just one of those genes, you lose something. But the doesn't take away from how spectacular this beautiful animal is. The beautiful oranges that come up that are flecked with this dark black. Usually, sometimes when you have this flecking, it's kind of faded. This is pitch black. They're just smaller. And then when the blacks are up here, bordering the top of it, they're pitch black. And when you've got the orangish type magma color that comes in there, you can really see where it starts to get that name for the Pompeii and whatnot. It's literally just lava. This is the beginning of the eruption, so to speak, to get to this. Pompeii is always where everybody seems to go with this, and there's a reason for that, but there's a lot of other directions you could go. This is a good male, and that's the cool thing about it. You could breed this to multiple females, and you can get lots of different things. You could go for Pompeiis. You could start putting this into other projects. There's nothing you could really create that's not good with this, other than if you put it to a Yellowbelly, and well, you'll get ivories sometimes, and you don't want that. So don't put it to a Yellowbelly, in my opinion, but put it to basically everything else, because this would be a very nice powerhouse male. And it just got put up not too long before we started this, so I anticipate it getting a bid here pretty soon. So I can definitely see this one going on auction. Another one from Reptile Creations. Well, this one's not in the lower amount at all, but they definitely started their reserve price rather than putting a reserve on it, and that'd be the Stranger Hurricane Clown. And there's a lot that can be said about how beautiful this is. Let's start with the head and just how nice orangey it is, how it gets this little bit of a swirl right there. That's really cool and unique. I don't know if I've seen something quite like that, almost like a little hurricane, right? The coloring in here, just shadows. Look at this. It's almost like it's glowing from underneath of it because of the contrast here with the slightly white undertones, and you see it on both sides of it. So this is almost like a ghostly type hue. It's almost a trick of the eye where this orange kind of goes down the back of it. Like it's like a subtle, like highlighted type color that goes over this normally flecked black, but whitish type sides. In between that, you've got the pattern that just ekes up from the bottom, and it is bordered by, again, this very dark black. Lots of contrast here. Even though you would arguably look at this and say this is a dark snake, there's still some whites in there that are trying to burst through. It's got great contrast in every regard, color, shading, and pattern. It's incredible. I'm not sure if something like this big will go on an auction and Morphmarket, but it could, and it's worth it. This would normally go for quite a bit more. So if this is the sort of thing you are looking for and you're looking to pump a good amount of money into a powerful female, this would be a really great option, because Hurricane Clowns are amazing, Stranger Clowns are amazing, and clearly the two of them together are even more amazing. I just can't get over the swirl on the head. That is something pretty cool. Next up, two from KC Live Innovation would be messing with my favorite gene, and that would be Monarch. Also with Hurricane, like our last one, this male here is a Hurricane Het Monarch. I have said it several times in this video, working hets in for your males isn't exactly the most ideal things, but Monarch, it can be a pricey gene. Trust me, I know. And sometimes that's the way to get into it. And on top of that, you've got a cool genetic to go along for the ride. I bought a Het Monarch male, actually, because there was an opportunity to get one with Blackhead in it at a much lower price than a visual Monarch Blackhead would be. So I'm going to try to breed that into the Monarch project and create my own Monarch Blackheads instead of just biting the bullet and paying for it. This is also a proven breeder at that too. So this is another one where you could put to a female. If you want to increase your odds, you could put it to a visual female. You'd be eating a little bit more cost there, but you could also put it to a Het Monarch. Now, only 1 in 4 of your babies will be Monarch in that case, and you'll really never know if they're Het Monarch because there's not a test quite yet for it. Although I believe that is in the short list to attempt. But when you do hit your Monarchs, you're definitely going to see that. And if you can hit the Hurricane Monarch, that would be really, really sharp. Another one here would be a Het Monarch Enchi Pastel Yellowbelly female. At that, it doesn't say that this one is a proven breeder, but kind of given the size of what you're seeing here and the fact that it's kind of coiled up in a FB40, that's big, this looks to be 2 size. It says Bull Python Adult on top of that, so maybe it's not proven, but it's ready to go. You could always message the seller, by the way, and kind of ask them more about it. You do have some time with 68 hours, so this could be an ideal way to get into that. Normally I like the darker side of Monarch. Yellowbelly I would be very happy with regardless of whether it's dark or light, but the light side for Monarch is very, very nice. Monarch, I always say, has a microdose of Desertghost in it. Not literally, but it cleans it up. It brightens it. Pastel works very well with Monarch. It creates a very nice, beautiful snake, and it stays that way for life. I mean, I was not as high on Enchi with Monarch, but I've actually seen a lot more lately that I really like. I thought that I didn't like it because it reduces the pattern, and I kind of like that being in there. I like that darker type color, and it kind of brings in more lights, but I saw some that I really like. And regardless of the fact that I definitely like the darker route a little bit more, again, I have to say it, but the light Monarchs are very nice still. And theoretically, you could buy these two together and kind of just get to going. I would imagine. Again, head-to-head is not ideal, but you're spending less than you would on just one male or female if you get these two together. So definitely some cool opportunities here for anybody who wants to get into Monarch. And finally, to round it out, would be this Blackhead Clown male from Clutch. Really cool one here. Blackhead is one of my favorite genes. It is really sharp, and this male here is very close to being able to be bred. Probably technically could go, but you know, you give it a few more meals, get it a little bit bigger, and you'd be very happy. Just having one gene in there, you might think like, oh, well, I can get a little bit more power. Blackhead, though, however, it can be a little bit more expensive in clown, I've noticed. So something, again, that maybe you have in a reserve male when you want to start working Blackhead into your clown projects. But the fact that he's already almost ready to go is pretty nice. Another one that maybe you use for a few years and eventually have someone else have the same opportunity that you're getting here and being able to breed him pretty darn close after you get him. Hope you enjoyed this week's auctions. Again, I'm not promising it, but I do believe we should be having a normal live. On top of that, it's going to be a little bit different, I think, if we can get it working, and that's because we have a webcam. So you can look at me. My brother's trying to get that set up if you really want to look at me for whatever reason. But I look forward to seeing everybody on those as always. So it'd be nice to get back to a normal schedule after the holidays. I hope you all have a good one. If you liked this video and you wanted to see some of the genetics we talked about and looked at here, you can actually check out videos on those right here and here.